name is Michael O'Kane, not the actor, Michael O'Kane, and I am the chairperson of the Humanist Association of Ireland. And before I speak to the motion this evening, I'd like to offer a few words as to what humanism is and why it matters in this debate. Humanism is a simple philosophy. It is an ethical life stance that emphasises reason, compassion and human dignity. It's about being good without God and living responsibly and treating others with empathy. Why begin with that? Because assisted dying is not just a legal or medical issue, it is a deeply human one. It asks us to consider autonomy and suffering and dignity and compassion. And for humanists, these are not abstract concepts, they're essential to how we understand life and death. Stephen Fry, when asked or confronted by Gay Byrne around the meaning of life and what would happen if he met God at the pearly gates, said the idea of God who creates us sick and commands us to be well is just not absurd, it's cruel. This sentiment echoes the humanist view. The morality and meaning are not handed down from above but arise from our shared experience. I am not a medical practitioner, and I would never presume to challenge the expertise of those who work in palliative care, including Professor O'Neill. His contributions to gerontology are clearly to be respected. But I speak tonight not as a clinician but as a son. Only last year, my mother, who had been seemingly in perfect health, all of a sudden was diagnosed with late-stage, non-curable cancer. Professor John Crown himself presented the news, and there was no way back. I can say this, my mum did not consider assisted dying, but she passed in May with fantastic palliative care. But there are others who may have said yes to the concept, or would, or maybe actually do. So that's something that we as a society should ponder this evening. We've already heard from Gino about the background, and we've mentioned Switzerland and Oregon, and we've seen other countries like Canada and Belgium, the Netherlands, Spain, Colombia, and many others take it on. But these laws are not reckless. They are built on safeguards, multiple medical assessments, and strict eligibility criteria. In Ireland, we've had, it's still illegal to have assisted dying under the Criminal Law Suicide Act of 1993. However, the tide is turning. The brilliant Gino Kenny that sits to my right, with the Ericus Committee and Group, published this landmark report recommending legislation for assisted dying in restricted circumstances. The Dáil vote is 76 to 53, a symbolic but significant step forward. The Humanist Association of Ireland submitted for that committee. The statements we positioned towards it were: the HAI supports voluntary assisted dying in circumstances where people are enduring immense pain and are suffering from a terminal, incurable, or progressive condition. The Humanist UK Association have said assisted dying isn't untested. Legislation is already working in many jurisdictions, as we talked about. In America, the Humanist Association said when life is without quality and when pain and discomfort rob life with significance, some persons cry out for release through death. So there's a lot to ponder. Medical perspectives. In fact, we know of a person linked to our association, Vicky Janssens, who went to Belgium in 2023. Her cancer was, like my mum's, incurable, her pain unmanageable, and she went to die in her choice of looking at it with dignity and with her family there. And the medical community is divided. It's obvious. The Association for Palliative Care oppose assisted dying. And yet there are many doctors, especially those working in end-of-life care, who support the legalisation, citing cases where palliative care measures failed and patients suffered needlessly. In Ireland, 75% of adults support assisted dying for people with terminal or life-limiting illnesses. And the highest support is by people, tellingly, if you want to look at it, under 35. In terms of our opposition, yes, Senator Ronan Mullen may argue from a moral or religious standpoint, but even he has acknowledged in the indignity of dying alone in multi-bed wards and the discomfort society has in facing death. Assisted dying is not about undermining life, it's about honouring it even in its final moments. For Professor O'Neill, who made clearly caution against against undermining palliative care, we do agree palliative care must be strengthened, but we must also acknowledge its limits. And I can speak to clinical trial development in later on as needed, but assisted dying is not a replacement, it's a last resort. And some fear slippery slope. But studies from countries that have implemented it show no clear evidence of abuse or uncontrolled expansion. Eligibility criteria is very defined and is constantly refined. Others worry about coercion. The ERTIS report recommends criminalising coercion, requiring 2 formal requests and independent medical assessments. There are robust safeguards being looked at. And to those who object on religious grounds, we respect all beliefs. As humanists, in a secular democracy, laws must reflect pluralism. And those who oppose assisted dying need not choose it, but they should not deny it to others. Why should this House support the motion? Legalised assisted dying is about compassion, autonomy and dignity. We already allow patients to refuse life-saving treatments. We already withdraw care in cases of unconsciousness. Why then should we deny a competent adult the right to choose a peaceful assisted death? The public supports it. The evidence supports it. The stories demand it. The political conversation is happening, and the Humanist Association of Ireland stands firmly behind this cause. This House should support the motion because it reflects the values of a modern, compassionate Ireland, because it offers hope, peace of mind and dignity to those who need it most, and because it's time we should join the growing number of nations who recognise the right to die is ultimately a human right.